Okay, great. So welcome everyone who is joining in to our SYA virtual information session. We are going to get started in just a few moments here. I see the view count rising, so we'll give people a couple of seconds and then we will get going. Again, this is School Year Abroad information session for our three countries, our academic program in Spain, Italy, and France. We are very excited for the program tonight. I will do a brief overview. So you will hear introductions by our fantastic alums from each of our three campuses. They all did the full year program. And then we will do a short admissions presentation, followed by a panel with our alums, and then a question and answer section. So I know some of you pre-submitted your questions. So thank you for those of you who did. Hopefully the chat feature is working this time. We've had some technical difficulties with it in the past. I will put my email in the chat bar now. It's just mlyn@sya.org. For those of you who have more specific questions, you can submit questions by email to me directly, and we can chat after the broadcast as well. Great. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome everybody. My name is Maggie Bland and I work on the admissions team at School Year Abroad. And we are so excited to be joined tonight by three of our awesome alums. From France, we have Ari. From Spain, we have Meredith. And from Italy, we have Isabel. So we are just going to go in that order for some brief introductions, and then we will continue on to the admissions presentation. So Ari, go ahead.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Ari et l'année dernière, j'avais passé l'année à Rennes, France, et maintenant je suis à New Jersey. Je suis une étudiante en Rutgers Prep. Hi, my name is Ari. Last year I was studying abroad in Rennes, France, and right now I'm currently a senior at Rutgers Prep.
Awesome. Thanks, Ari. Next up, we have Meredith from SYA Spain.
Hola, soy Meredith, soy de Hingham, Massachusetts, y el año pasado estuve en Zaragoza, España, y ahora estoy en mi último año en Milton Academy. So in English, hi, I'm Meredith. I'm from Hingham, Massachusetts. Last year, I studied in Zaragoza, Spain, and this year I'm a senior at Milton Academy.
Thank you, Meredith. And then finally, Isabel from SYA Italy.
Buongiorno a tutti, mi chiamo Isabel e ho studiato a SYA Italia a Viterbo. Sono andata per tutto l'anno e adesso vado a Chadwick on Manhattan Beach, California. So my name is Isabel Edelston. I studied in Viterbo for SYA Italy for all of the year. I live in California and I go to Chadwick School.
Awesome. Thank you all for those awesome introductions. You can all remove yourselves from this broadcast, and then we will bring you back when it is time for the Q&A. And I will go ahead and present my screen for the admissions presentation, and then we will carry on. So here we go. All right. So again, School Year Abroad, we are so excited to have you all at our virtual information session tonight. So at School Year Abroad, our goal is really to make the world your home. We do that through a variety of ways, but one of them is through our host families, and another is creating a small, very intentional community of students and teachers. So with campuses in France, Italy, and Spain, we hope that you will take this opportunity to push yourself outside your comfort zones, gain independence, and turn your textbooks into context. So I'm going to share a brief video before I continue on, and let's add this to the screen.
Every experience you have here will be an adventure. The risks, the rewards, they're all included.
This entire year has just been about things being based on where we are or where we are going with the school next. You learn about something and then you get to experience it. That makes classes a lot more engaging, knowing that we're going to see the things that we're studying.
You really feel the gravity of the things that you learn out of your textbook rather than just hearing about them and memorizing some flashcards. I think it's the difference between memorization and understanding.
It's not just schoolwork, it's actual practical experience that you can't really get anywhere else.
What SYA does best is make students comfortable being uncomfortable. You really start to embrace the idea of being uncomfortable.
I don't think any other program could really give you this experience. And they're willing to throw their students into these situations, trust that we'll be okay. And in the end, we are okay, and I think that we take so much away from it just because SY is willing to give us that trust and freedom.
So the Capstone project is the culminating end-of-year project for all SYA students. It's very much grounded in the fact that we are in Spain, and the goal of the project is to take best advantage of the resources that are around us.
I think that I've been able to get through the surface level of my experience here, not only with the land, but with the people. And I think that the longer that you're here, the deeper beneath the surface you can really get.
My host family, they are the cutest people I have ever met. I can leave Italy saying, I'm part Italian now. I'm part of their family and they love me and I love them. The relationships that I've created with them, that's something that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life.
My friends have been a big part of this experience because I've been able to find a really good group of people who are just as adventurous as I am. I'm very glad I did SYA. It has opened my horizons to travel and being more independent.
I know it can be sort of scary thinking, oh, 9 months in a foreign country. It flies by so fast and it's so fun. It's an experience that I feel so fortunate to have been involved in. It's not something that a lot of people get to do, so if you have the opportunity, please do it.
For anyone who's on the fence about going to SYA or even applying, the fact that you're even thinking about it probably means that you're somebody who should be here.
All right, so let me bring up my slideshow one more time and we will go over some of the things that you heard in the video. So at SYA, all of our students live with a personally matched host family as they immerse themselves in the local culture and feel truly at home while living abroad. So SYA students are part of a small student body composed of sophomores, juniors, and seniors from all across the United States. For our France and Spain programs, I do like to mention that there is a 2-year or level 2 language requirement, but I do also like to note that a wide variety of language learners excel at SYA due to our fully immersive program. Our hands-on and fieldwork-based curriculum will challenge you to think creatively and critically, all while fulfilling your graduation requirements. You'll venture outside the classroom and learn from the culture around you as you take your education into your own hands. You will be amazed at the confidence and self-reliance you can build as you travel throughout your host country and design your own final capstone project. All of our students participate in at least 2 local activities, whether that be an instrument, a sport, or community service. And you will be guided at each step of the way by our dedicated local and American faculty members who serve as your teachers, college counselors, and advisors. So each campus does have a college counselor and students have the ability to take the SATs. But with that being said, the really important part about SYA in terms of the college search is that our students really find their voices abroad. So in presenting themselves to colleges and universities as SYA graduates, our students are saying that they have a distinctive story to tell, and they demonstrate the grit and ambition it takes to live in a new country and learn a new language. Just take a look at the colleges and universities most frequently attended by our SYA grads. We also believe that financial need should not discourage any student from applying. That's why about half of our families receive financial aid or one of our 10+ scholarships. So in conclusion, we really hope that you will seize this opportunity to immerse yourself in a new language and culture and make the world your home. So whether this be in Rennes, France, Viterbo, Italy, or Saragossa, Spain, we do hope that you can join us. So I will stop sharing here and bring back our awesome alums to the screen as we transition into our panel section of the program. So welcome back, everybody. We are going to dive right into classwork and our favorite classes at SYA. So we will go to Isabel and then after to Ari about your favorite SYA class.
Hi. So for my favorite class, while there were a lot that I liked, I think my favorite was probably Experiential Italian. And this was a class that I had never heard of before going to SYA. And so at SYA Italy, I took 2 Italian classes, and this one was more focused around the culture, which was part of the reason I was there, was to learn about the culture and just everything surrounding me. And it was taught by just the best professor. And I just felt so comfortable in that class. I could ask any questions. And we had a unit entirely on hand gestures because it's a really big part of Italian culture to use your hands when you talk. So that was really interesting. And all of the homework, like a lot of it involved our host families. And it kind of gave us a reason at the beginning of the year to talk and bond with them and learn more about our host family and the way they live their lives. And it just made me so much more comfortable with them. And a lot of our field work, when we got assignments to do our field work, a lot of it involved going out and talking with locals or like observing people and noting the differences between the way of life there and in America. So I just thought it was really interesting and I enjoyed that class so much.
Thank you, Isabel. And you touched on a couple points I want to reiterate. First is that for our Italy program, you do not need Italian experience. So I'm glad that your experiential Italian class is bringing up hand gestures, because it does involve a lot of hand gestures at the start of our Italy program for our students who don't have as much Italian experience. They still do take Italian the whole time and improve at an incredible pace and still live with an Italian host family. And they are given that opportunity to take an entire class based in conversations and culture. So that tends to be a highlight for our students. Thank you for speaking about it. Ari, what about you?
So for me, like Isabel, I loved all of my classes, but English was really one that stood out to me. And you may be wondering why, but this English class was unlike any other I've had before. We talked about a lot of things beyond literature, like culture shock and how our new lives in our new countries and cities differed from the ones at home. Almost all the authors we read were expats who were living in Paris, like Ernest Hemingway, James Baldwin, Gertrude Stein. And it was really nice to be able to see these authors and relate to their experiences. And just the discussions in those class, like they were just so important to our experience there and so relevant. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking about our English curriculum, Ari. I think it surprises students how place-based our curriculum is, even for the classes taught in English, which are English and math. And it is very intentional. They are honors and AP level courses that we offer to really allow our students to dive into the immersion experience and learn about others' experiences with immersion. And so while it may be surprising to some of our listeners that English was your favorite class in France, I'm not surprised to hear it based on how experiential and applicable our curriculum is at SYA. So thank you. Speaking about curriculum, we are going to now transition to outside of the classroom to our activities, which all of our students do at least 2 of. So let's go to Meredith and then Isabel about your SYA activities.
Yeah, so I joined a local track team in Spain, which was probably one of the most initially terrifying things that I ever did in Spain. I was the only American on the team, and I joined in like late September, so my Spanish wasn't great when I first joined. But I decided to go for it, and one of the girls in the team actually, she ended up being my neighbor. And so we would carpool to and from cross country practice every day. And she became one of my closest friends in Spain and someone who I continue to stay in touch with. And so it was a really great experience. And I think it helped my Spanish a lot. And I don't know, I think it was just so special to be a part of a team there and to actually make such close Spanish friends while I was studying there.
That's great. I think we hear from a lot of our students that joining a sports team or bonding over a shared interest, even across a language, can be so powerful, because while you may be a little bit behind in the language, you can still bond over this awesome activity. That was one of the best experiences for me while I was studying abroad, was joining a team, because first, I mean, it's great niche vocabulary, but the relationships through just a shared interest from the start is such a good foundation. And then you can learn the language. But I'm so glad you had that experience, Meredith. And Isabel, what about you for your activity?
For my activities, I joined as many as possible because there are just so many offered. And when originally there's a person who's in charge, and at the beginning of the year, he presented all of our options, and there were just way too many I wanted to do. But like Meredith, I joined a sports team. I played on a soccer team, and I actually just practiced with a guys team because I originally went to the girls team, but because soccer is just starting to become more of a bigger thing for women in Italy and like younger girls, it was all mixed ages, and they had to go too far like to compete. So I practiced with a guys team, and the coach was an old host dad. And again, like Meredith, I think just being a part of a team is so beneficial. And I did it with another friend at SY Italy, and we just kind of stuck it out together. And neither of us knew Italian before, so it was really interesting, especially at the very beginning of the year when we just did not speak very much Italian at all. And then additionally, I was the co-chief of yearbook, and that was not working with Italians, but really just working with other people in the SYA community. And I tried ceramics for the first time because it was a big part of the Etruscan culture in the city. And I also did a law internship with a lawyer who was a host dad of my friend.
I love the host family connections. I hear from a lot of SYA alums that host families seem to be everywhere in the towns where SYA is. And especially when we talk about the final capstone project, I think a lot of people get guidance with their capstone by host parents of other people in the program, just because it's such a small community. Our campuses range from about 45 to 60-ish students. And so the host family network is a strong one. Transitioning to food, Ari, can you tell us about your favorite food in France?
Yes, so there was so much delicious food there and lots of new foods that I got to try. But my favorite was the galette. And it's not only because it was delicious, but it was because it was a shared moment with my host family as well. And a galette is basically a crepe, but it's made out of buckwheat. And it's very typical to Bretagne, which is where we were in France. And I remember the first time they sat me down and they're like, we're going to teach you how to make a galette. Like, you put the cheese first, and then the egg, and then the ham. And it was just a really fun experience. And every week for them, it was almost like Taco Tuesday. Once a week, they would eat their galettes, and and at the end, I was making them for myself because they had taught me how. And it was just a delicious food and a special moment shared between us. So, yeah.
That's great. I think we hear from a lot of alums as well and people who have lived in Europe that the making of food and sharing of food is such an important part of all of these cultures. And those moments, oftentimes with host families too, are the real bonding moments. It's like the small moments that you don't expect. And I'm glad that was your case. Ari, we're going to go back to you for your favorite trip. Before we do that, I'm just going to outline our travel a little bit for our audience. So we have kind of two types of travel. One is SYA planned travel. That's mostly at the start of the year. And then students can earn the right to independently travel. That's with other students from SYA. In order to do that, they have to be in good academic standing and demonstrate proficiency in the language. They also have to plan an entire agenda, which is great travel planning skills, and get it approved by the school, host family, and also the family back home. So we often have parents asking about travel requirements, and they will always be aware of where their child is going, where they're staying, and all the details in between. So Ari, why don't you please share your favorite trip with all of us?
So the really cool thing about SYA is this traveling with the school as well as the independent travel. And like Maggie said, it really teaches you how to kind of adult on a trip because you have to choose the hotel and the trains and make sure everything's coordinated and get to whatever you have planned on time. So in the spring, I went down to Bordeaux with 3 of my friends, and the city is absolutely beautiful, and getting to share such a fun and exciting memory, especially as a teenager, getting to go to these beautiful cities in Europe with your friends and explore them. You just create such an amazing bond. And we went surfing, We went down to the beach one day, and our surf instructor was yelling at us, and he was this French man, and he had this really loud voice, and he'd be like, "Allez, allez, allez." So it was just really funny, and there were so many good laughs on that trip and just really special. So I encourage you, if you can, go on independent travel trips because you'll create memories that'll last a lifetime.
That's great. And I think it's important to emphasize too, for those of you who are potentially on the fence between the semester and the year provides a lot more opportunity to go on those independent travels. I see everybody shaking their head because I've heard from a lot of fall students that they left right at the time that you were earning the access to be able to independently travel with a group of people from SYA and an approved itinerary. But it can be such an amazing experience within the host country. Speaking of amazing experiences, let's talk about host families. So Isabel, can you tell us a little bit about some of your favorite times with your host family?
Yeah. So my host family, in my opinion, like I think I got so lucky and just got the best host family I possibly could have. I had two host sisters, so one who's 17 and one who's 21, and then both my host parents, and we all lived together. And then on the floor above us, my host nonna lived above us, so my host grandma. And it was just, they were all very, very close, and I completely felt a part of the family by the end of the year. And they somehow managed to do that while they've hosted 8 people, so they knew exactly what they were doing, and they keep in touch with each of them, and they don't make it seem like a small deal hosting someone. Like they keep doing it because they enjoy it, and they try and keep in touch with everyone, and they consider us all their children just kind of around the world. And I don't think I can choose like a favorite moment with them, but ones in general that I specifically remember, just all of the long meals we had. Mostly like on Sundays because of my host dad's work schedule. That was the Sunday lunch. It was always with the family. Our host nonna she always came down to our floor and ate with us around a table, and it usually lasted a couple hours. And then some days we would go to other Italian families, or their family friends would come over, and those could last way longer. Like I had one that lasted like 7 hours. And usually it just involved the cooking beforehand and then sitting around, and there were always multiple courses and just so much discussion at the table that really helped me like bond with them and learn the language. And then depending on the time of year, if there was a certain holiday around, when Carnival was going on in Venice, and just throughout the country, it was a really big thing, and they would teach me how to make certain dishes, and then we would all eat them together. And it was just really special getting to bond with them over that.
That's awesome. What a great snapshot of living with a host family. It was also my favorite part of studying abroad. And our SYA families are fully prepared to incorporate the SYA student into everything that they do as a family, including hour-long meals. So whatever our host family does, our SYA students do too. They have a really long survey that they fill out for preferences in their host family and family makeup. I did have a question here about kind of religion in a host family. That's also a preference that's on our survey. And so all of our host families are also interviewed and background checked. And each campus has a host family coordinator who's checking in with the families, checking in with the student, and making sure things are going well. So it's a very important, it's a crucial part of our program, and really one of the most important parts of our language development that we see in our students. So much of that grows in those meal times and around the house. So let's talk a little bit about a typical day. We get this question a lot. So Meredith, could you kind of go over what a day in the life of SYA Spain students is?
Yeah, so my day started at 7:30. Every day I took public transportation to get to school. So there was a bus stop right outside my house, and then the bus took me like a block away from school. And then most mornings I would go to a cafe called El Criollo. It's a very popular cafe amongst SYA students because it's like a 5-second walk from school. So usually I try to go a little bit early and get a cafe con leche before my classes. And then each student takes 6 classes. So there's English and math, which are obviously in English, And then there's kind of like a traditional Spanish class, which is grammar and stuff like that. And then there's experiential Spanish, which is more fieldwork based. And then there's 2 electives. So I took art history and Spanish civilization and culture. And something really cool about SYA is that it's definitely very different from any other school because it's very place-based. So a lot of times we're leaving the building, talking to people on the street, doing interviews. I remember one time in my experiential Spanish class, we were researching neighborhoods around Zaragoza. And one day we got to figure out how to get to, we were working in partners, and each partner had a different neighborhood. And basically you had to go with your partner and figure out how to get to the neighborhood and then spend a couple hours there, get lunch there, interview people, which was super cool. And then after school, usually what I would do is go to a cafe and do some homework with friends before heading back to spend some time with my host family. I know my host sister and I, we used to go to the gym every Thursday, so I would do that with her. And then each night we had like an hour and a half long dinner as well. So that was what my day looked like.
Great. And all of our students do have weekly host family dinners. So that's every night, as well as a curfew. So that's to be expected with all of our campuses and around a similar schedule as well. So briefly before we go to our last question, I know we didn't talk too much about capstone projects, and we do have a question about it. So I don't know if one of you wants to talk a little bit about your capstone. For the viewers, their experiential language class turns into kind of a capstone workshop class where each student gets to pick a topic of interest and really dive into it and create a presentation for the entire school about that topic. So I don't know if one of you maybe wants to share about what you did your capstone on.
Yeah, I can talk about my capstone. I did it on refugees in France. And I thought that was a really interesting topic to choose because their experience was very different from our experience where we chose to come into France. And I got to talk to the director of a refugee center in France and talk to a couple of refugees about their experience. And it was really impactful and really amazing to see how far and long these people had traveled. So at the end of the year, as everyone was leaving, I decided to set up a fundraiser. So people who had stuff like books or clothes or school supplies that they didn't want to bring back home with them, they could donate it to these refugee centers.
That's great. And I love the practical element at the end there with the kind of drive. That's great. So our final question for all of our alums is, what made you apply to SYA? So a lot of the people on this call right now are kind of on the fence or making their final decision. So, what made you apply to SYA, or maybe what you would tell a student who's on this video right now, really considering applying to SYA. So let's start with Isabel, and then we'll go to Meredith, and then Ari.
For me, I have kind of always known I wanted to do something like an exchange or going abroad, because when I was younger, we hosted exchange students and I just had them staying in my house. And like one year we hosted a girl for an entire year, and she just became like an older sister to me, and I wanted to be in her shoes and go experience someone else's culture. So I always thought I would do that in college, but then when COVID came, SYA came and presented on a Zoom, and I just kind of immediately knew, because it just made me realize that I could do something like that in high school. And they were talking a lot about the host family experience, and I just realized that if I did do that in college, it's not something that I would get to experience. And I just thought that the host family experience really made it's so much more unique and so much more experiential, and really changing your entire lifestyle to fit the place that you're going to. And I would just say, if you're interested in it and you're on the Zoom, I would say apply. Originally, my parents weren't entirely convinced, and I just said, hey, like I had a discussion with them and we talked about the fact that I was going to apply. And if I got in and in the end I decided not to do it, I could always like withdraw last minute, which is obviously not what you want to do, but I just was so set on it, and I just wanted it to happen and wanted to keep my options open. And like, I set up meetings with different people to ask questions and just get as much information as possible, and it can make you figure out what you want to do. And I just would say it's such a unique experience. So
Thank you for that, Isabel. And thank you for outlining the application process being also a really awesome time to do that soul searching, and answering our essay question of why do you want to do this can really be a great process, regardless of if you go or not. I think it can be an awesome just taking the steps and really figuring out why you want to do something like this, because it can be hard to wrap your head around, but I think the process does a good job of challenging you to think about that. What about you, Meredith?
So my older brother actually went to SY Spain 2 years before I did. And my mom also did SY Spain when it was in Barcelona 30 years ago. So I kind of grew up hearing stories, and, learning another language is always something that's very celebrated in my house. So I kind of always knew that I wanted to do SYA when I was a junior. But I also think that when you get to your third year of high school, it can kind of feel a little bit like going through the motions, especially once COVID hit. So I knew that I wanted to experience something different. And I think going to SY really gave me the opportunity to look at things with a new perspective, which I realize, especially now that I'm back at Milton for my senior year. I feel like I have like a whole new outlook on life and what it means to learn and what it means to be curious. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend SYA.
That's great. And Meredith, I'm glad you talked about the return as well, because we do get a lot of questions about that. And I think I've heard from many teachers that I work with on campus that who really love and endorse the program. And I say, why do you do it? And they say, it's when the students return to campus, and the energy that they bring, the enthusiasm for learning, enthusiasm for a language, it's really contagious, and teachers love it. Students love it. And I think it's really powerful to come back to a campus with a new perspective, and be excited to share it and talk about it, and get others excited too. And I think a lot of our sending schools really do benefit from our alums coming back to campus and sharing what they've learned. So I'm glad that that's been your experience. And over to you, Ari.
Kind of adding on to what both Isabel and Meredith said, I completely agree with both of them. And since I was little, I always really loved France, and I knew I wanted to travel abroad. I just didn't know when, and I thought it would be in college. And one day during COVID, I was scrolling along Instagram. I saw an ad for SYA, and I was like, what if I just went? And I talked about it to my parents. They're like, why not? And I applied, and I was able to talk to a couple of alums, and just hearing the excitement in people's voices and how they genuinely evolved as people and changed and grew into this whole new person when they were abroad. It was really amazing to see, because you can see how people's eyes light up when they were like, oh, when I was in France, I did this and it was the coolest thing ever. Or when I was in Spain or Italy. And just, I think now coming back to, I'm the president of my French club, and just getting to share everything that I learned there, and kind of like spreading this love of culture and learning and other countries and languages. It's really special to me, because it's amazing when people want to hear about your experiences and what you've lived through, because you really do see life through a new perspective, even if you're in the same place. And it might be scary to be like, well, if I leave junior year, what's going to happen to everything? Everything will be here when you get back, and you're going to see it in a whole new light. So I really encourage you to just do it and see where it leads you, because all the teachers in the program are amazing. All the students in the program are amazing. The host families are amazing, and just the entire experience is amazing.
Thank you for that. And I think there are so many components that makes SYA so special. And I love that all of you spoke to a different kind of preparedness and a different reason for why you ended up applying. And I love that RU said, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw an ad and I wondered to myself, like, oh my gosh, what if I did this? And we see a lot of applicants who, kind of it struck a chord, or they heard the presentation and they thought, maybe I could do it. And so there's a huge range of how students hear about us or what they come in knowing about SYA. But I'm so glad that you can see this from our alums, that all of the students end up being incredibly successful, just because there's that passion there and there's an excitement for a challenge and learning something new. And I'm just so glad that all of you spoke to such a different experience of what made you apply. So we have a couple questions that were pre-submitted. So one is, did you feel safe while you were studying at SYA? So I'll talk about a couple of things and then our alums can jump in if you want to mention anything. First thing is, all of our cities are very safe. They are smaller than kind of the major cities surrounding them, and that's very intentional as well. SYA is known throughout the communities that we are in. All of our students have a curfew every single night. They do get their agendas checked whenever they are traveling, and they do have to be reachable by cell phone at all hours of the day. Our resident directors at each campus will call students just to check in and see how they're doing, particularly on weekends, or if a student is traveling with friends. And so there is a process, and we also have a health and safety team at our office as well. Anything else you all want to speak to about feeling safe at SYA?
Yeah, I just want to say too, like, if anything ever happens, all the staff there and especially the directors are super reachable. I had a friend who was coming back from Monaco because she was there with her mom, and she had lost her passport, which had her visa in it. And the director was with her the entire time along the way. And it just ended up being a really good experience for her because she just had this aid and she's completely freaking out traveling alone. So
Absolutely.
If you ever need anything, they're there for you, and go to them.
Absolutely. And I think it helps to have such strong relationships with our resident directors and also with your host family. Our students reach out to their host family all the time, and can really rely on them. And I see a chat question coming in. How do students meet science requirements? So this is a great question. So we don't offer any of the core sciences on our campuses. So the lab sciences are too hard for us to offer with a student body of 40 to 50 students. We do offer a version of environmental science or agroecology at each of our campuses, which counts for most schools as an honors level science credit. If students have to take that for a graduation requirement, they have to either do it before or after they attend SYA or do a summer course. So we can talk about that. That's as well as AP European History or AP US History. They would either have to do an online course or take it before or after they attend SYA. All of our curriculum is so place-based that we do, again, they're honors and some AP level math classes, but we do have to keep the curriculum within the SYA program because it is so location-based. So there does have to be some sort of finagling with the sending school about, when a student is going to take AP history or physics. When I studied abroad in high school, I took US history and biology my senior year, and it was totally fine. I think that I hear from a lot of students that they're nervous about that, but then it's totally worth it at the end. So there is some academic planning that has to come along the way. Another question, the admissions essay. It's a pretty general prompt. It's basically, why are you prepared to attend SYA? Some variation of that. And it's just one longer essay prompt, which students have to do. There's also an interview, transcript, and 3 teacher recommendations required for the application. There's another pre-submitted question about what would you say to a student who has not yet mastered the language? Would you still recommend that someone applies even if they're not fully comfortable with the language? I see some head nods. And would anybody like to take this one? What would you say to a student who maybe just finished level 2 or level 3 who's not feeling super competent in the language?
I mean, I went to SYA Italy, so there wasn't a language requirement, so I can't really speak on that, but I would say definitely go for it. Like, I did not know much Italian at all, and that kind of scared me, and I almost chose SYA Spain because of that, because I met the requirements to go there. But I really just was interested in the culture and just the experience of SYA Italy. Like, something about it drew me towards it. And while I was nervous at first, and it was hard to communicate with the host families a little at first, like that's part of the experience. And you just get so comfortable, like messing up and learning from it, and you come to enjoy it. And that's part of the reason you're going. And your host families aren't going to expect you to be perfect. And if you meet anyone in the country you're going to and you start speaking with them, they tell you're a foreigner, they're not ever like gonna judge you for messing up. They're just appreciating the fact that you're there and you care enough to learn and are trying, and they'll usually like get really excited while talking with you. And I just think, yes, you should totally go, and that experience it's there to have you learn and to get you comfortable in just trying and like speaking. And I just think it's so like beautiful being able to speak with an entirely new population and share experiences with like so many more people, like through learning. And just like all of this practice is there to help you, and you don't need to already like have reached a certain level of mastery before going there and trying. So
Absolutely. I think I hear from a lot of students as well, that the process of learning just feels so different at SYA because most of our students are used to just learning in a classroom, maybe 1 hour a day, and it's really hard to feel proficient. And then when you're surrounded by the language 24/7, you are talking to your host siblings, your host family. It's not an intimidating environment, and you're also absorbing so much of it that students learn so quickly. And I wish I could explain it better than that. But in going, I went to our campus in Spain last spring, and seeing the proficiency, hearing the level, the accents. I was a Spanish teacher after I studied abroad in Spain, and it was incredible. I was so impressed. And I think it's one of those experiences that is hard to describe, but we have full faith in our accepted students that they will be able to do it. And that's everyone from a level 2 Spanish or French student to someone who's never spoken Italian before in Italy. So we are really confident in that, and our process and approach really make sure our students are successful in that process as well. So that is it. If you have specific questions, please email me at mbland@sya.org. Please follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Our campus reporters are producing awesome content. And just a huge thank you to Isabel, Meredith, and Ari for your time tonight, for joining us, and for sharing your wisdom and experiences at SYA. You all are incredible, and we are so grateful to learn from all of you. And I'm sure your host families are at home just cheering you on. So proud of you as well. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, audience, for joining tonight. And we look forward to seeing your applications come in. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.